As it was once said, it's the economy, stupid. All right, let's talk about it. This is the real story with Adam and Sherry. I'm Adam Hamalian,
And I'm Sherry Hutchens.
and this is where two broker associates talk about all things real estate. Hey, Sherry.
Hey, Adam. I think that's a James Carville quote.
I thought it was James. I wasn't sure whether it was him or Axelrod, but yeah.
Yeah, no, Carville, the cage raging Cajun, didn't they call him that?
Yes, something like that. Wasn't it one of the oddest marriages, him and his conservative political pundit wife?
Yes, exactly. I guess opposites do attract.
You can't imagine something like that happening in the current political environment.
No, they won't even get in the same room, much less marry each other.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's not talk politics because
Okay.
people get that everywhere. We are going to talk about real estate today. Oh, wait, we
Okay.
always talk about real estate.
Yes, we do.
And we usually start the show with a little market update. But this episode, we're going to do the whole thing about the market update for the first quarter here in 2026.
That is correct.
So winter quarter is kind of an interesting quarter. We start thinking about real estate and is it setting the tone for the year? Did we survive from what came out of the holidays? What political events are affecting the market? We're going to touch on a bunch of those things. Um,
Okay.
Sherry, where do you want to start?
Let's start at the beginning.
The beginning. A
Actually,
very good place to start.
exactly.
In
How
reading, you begin with A, B, C. In singing, we begin with Do, Re, Mi. Oh, sorry. Musical theater popped into my head. Yes, I'm a nerd. Okay, keep going.
show tunes. Is that a show tune?
Yeah, that's Sound of Music. Do, Re, Mi from the Sound of Music.
Oh, that's right. For listeners out there, they will be horrified that until I partnered with Adam, I had never seen The Sound of Music.
Yes, that was we had to rectify that, people.
Yep, it's
And we definitely got her to the wedding, kind of the post wedding to the end with the Nazis are really heavy. I had to hold her hand through that part, but it was only slightly easier than looking at current events.
That's right. Okay, real estate. So the beginning for me is 2001. I assume you don't want to go back that far.
Oh, we can go ahead.
No, well, I I mean, if you had to draw a line for real estate from 2001 until current, it kind of goes like this, up and down. It's a wavy line because nothing ever stays the same. Don't you agree?
Well, I would say yes, it's cyclical, but I would say up until about 2008, generally there was a gradual increase in real estate values in California.
I mean, always, right? Real estate is never a bad investment. My parents paid $27,000 for their house in 1968. $27,000. You can't even buy a car for that now,
No,
right?
no.
So yes, I mean I was taught that the average appreciation in a normal real estate year was about 4%. And we haven't been in 4% for, I can't remember since when, you know? You want to start with 2020?
Well, yeah, well, let's start. Yes, let's start. Do you remember what the number was pre-COVID in 2019?
The appreciation?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't remember.
I think it was like 8% that year actually, but it
Okay.
might have been flat. Uh,
All right.
we should have had these graphs up. We spent hours looking at the data, people,
Mhm.
hours. And Sherry is a spreadsheet person, and even she was getting a glazed over look. Um,
Well, it was a lot of information to take in at a time, and I'm usually better with them when I am doing the work myself, when I'm doing the spreadsheets myself. And this time you took it over.
yeah.
So,
So if we obviously there's two major marking points in the last 20 years in the real estate market that had unusual effects. Now there'll be people out there that tell you that nothing is unusual, it's just the next thing, that there's going to be something, we just don't know what it is. So we can talk about the dot-com boom, we could talk about other stuff like that, but really the 2008 recession where the market imploded because of the mortgage backed securities just devolving and liar loans and all sorts of stuff like that. So that was an abnormal disruption in the market. And then the second event, of course, is COVID, which is now we are more than 5 years away from it. But when it started, it swung the business one way, swung it the other way, and then swung it back because of some major infusion of cash and low interest rates.
They
So
call that a V. Was it a V?
it was a K, right?
The
Where
K.
where it was affecting everybody the same, and then all of a sudden, for those who had assets, it went up, and for
Yeah.
those who didn't have assets, it went down, so that it
Yeah.
split. And that's why you get a K market.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Um, all right. So one of the things I remember about the charts we looked at earlier this week is that in the average sales price in 2019 was 1,195,000.
Yeah. So
Uh,
that we're talking about for us, this is the 10 cities that we work in most, from Orinda to Clayton, from Martinez to Danville. And
yep.
we were only looking at single family homes.
Yep. Yep. And we're only looking at first quarter because we're in the first quarter, and that's what this whole thing is about, is
Yep.
first quarter. So 1,195,000, it just is almost makes me laugh because there is no place, for example, in Walnut Creek where you can buy a single family home for 1,195,000. That's how much it has changed in 5 years,
Yep.
right? Well, that I guess it's more like 7 years because that I'm talking about 2019.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so COVID hits, and 2020 we get locked down. People are very hungry for getting out of their condos in the city and moving into homes, wanting backyards, since that was the only way we could socialize. In meantime, they started ratcheting down the interest rates, and money was cheap. So people were not spending their cash on vacations and other stuff like that. So they had cash to spend. They got low rates and they had motivation. And the home prices went up, what was it, 13% in 1 year,
Yes. Yeah.
13.5% in a 12-month period. It was
In
just
our
crazy.
area, in
Yeah.
our area, yeah. It was a crazy time because we went into lockdown on March 16th. I remember the governor coming on and making the announcement that we were going to lock down for 21 days. 21 days. I think I said to you, what am I going to do for 21 days?
Yeah.
Little
And,
did we know it was going to be a year.
and what did I say? We're working.
You did say we're working. We didn't know we could work because the next day everything was closed. Title companies were closed, inspectors weren't working, banks weren't working. I mean, everybody except you. You were on the freeway driving down to Danville to show a house, if I remember correctly.
Which I sold.
Yes, you did.
We had a
Yeah,
very motivated buyer. He saw what was coming and says, I just need to get in now," and he had the cash, so
yeah,
we got him into that place quickly.
yes.
Well, I don't want to talk about us necessarily, but let's talk about stay on the what's happening in the market. So yeah, so we had a year over year from 20 to 21, 13.5% increase. And the next year was similar. I think it was 9.5 that next year. So over 2 years, the home values went up almost 25% over a 48-month or 24-month period.
Yeah,
Just crazy.
crazy times. I mean, the height of the market, it was 2021.
Yeah.
Most number of houses sold and the highest prices.
There
Uh,
were in the first quarter alone in our area, there were almost 1,400 homes sold in January to March of 2021.
in one quarter in 10 cities.
Yeah.
That is an enormous amount of inventory for one quarter.
Yeah. If you were to go back and take a 10-year average, it's about 900 homes sold in the first quarter.
Mhm.
And the last couple of years, it's been in the mid sixes, to give an example. So in 2022, we had twice as many homes sold that we did in first quarter 24 and first quarter 25. Slightly better first quarter 26. We're up to 700 homes sold. So we're getting closer to that 900 average, but still fewer transactions being made.
Yeah, so we barreled through 2021, sold 1,400 homes, 2022 comes and we're doing fine January, February, March, and then we have our first interest rate hike of 7 in 1 year.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So this is where it swung, right? We had low interest rates, people are buying up houses, and now inflation is off the charts because everybody was given money that they
Yeah.
weren't quote unquote earning and then having more buying power because of the reduced interest rate. So that's how we got in. I'm not an economist. Don't get upset at me if I didn't do that right. But that's what happened. And so that's why the interest rates, because of inflation, started ticking up so quickly, was to slow the economy down because it had been supercharged.
I remember in 2022 when we had our annual pie party, we were nervous about all the clients who had bought in 2021 and whether or not they were going to be upset because they paid top dollar for their homes. And all of a sudden, there's 7 interest rate hikes and the prices are starting to come down. And what we didn't know, and this was relayed to us at our pie party, was our clients didn't care how much they paid for their house in 2021 because they had a 3% interest rate. And they were like, woohoo,
Yeah.
this is the best thing ever. It didn't matter how much they paid for the house.
Because they were like most people, they were buying based on their monthly budget, not on the actual purchase price.
Right.
So if they could afford, I'll just say $5,000 a month for mortgage, insurance, taxes, then whatever that was, it didn't matter the purchase price, that mattered what they could afford. And I think that's how most people shop when they get pre-qualified. They don't necessarily look at they say I can spend this much per month, and then the lender says, well, this is how much house you could buy.
Yeah. They kind of back into it, which makes sense because we know how much we can afford to spend on housing, which in the Bay Area is higher than the rest of the country. I think it's close to 50% on housing in our market.
Yeah, don't tell Dave Ramsey that. He thinks it's totally out of whack.
What does he want it to be?
I forget what it is, but it's and he's not wrong in the sense of you need to
Right.
have a budget, you need to that you can live within. He thinks
Right.
it should be much lower and that you should, anyway, let's not talk about Dave Ramsey. We could talk about financial planning another time, but uh
Okay. That
I'm
sounds
sorry, I
good.
get so distracted easily. I'm the proverbial squirrel. Um,
No comment.
you have to work with me. I haven't had enough caffeine today. I feel a little hyper.
I was going to say, anyway, 7 interest rate hikes, and then everything slowed down, got very quiet. I mean, quiet. We probably sold 25 or 30 houses that year, but that it was quiet. It wasn't hair on fire like it was in 2021 and 2020.
Yeah.
And then people got used to the interest rates, as they always do. Everybody needs a place to live. Okay, rates are 6.5 or 7%. How much can I afford now? And we go into 2023.
So that's the year we went from almost 1,000 homes sold in the first quarter in 22 to 23 where we had 650.
Yeah.
So a third less homes sold in
Yep.
the first quarter of 23. And that was a shock to the system. Um,
Yeah.
certainly for real estate agents trying to win business, just think about half as many transactions compared to 3 years previously. And it was a good time to weed out lesser agents from the business only those of us that were more competent survived.
Right.
And we survived because we have more experience and we know what we're doing. Um, the the other thing that we haven't really tracked is necessarily home values. And so we were talking, you mentioned earlier that a typical average over time appreciation and value it was about 4%.
Mhm.
And and that still might be the case if we look over a long enough period of time, but we just went from 2021 and 2022 gains of 13 and a half and almost 10% those 2 years to now actually a decrease in home values by 1% and followed by 2024 and 2025. I think one of them was like a 2% loss and the other one was just flat altogether. So 3 years combined where we had a negative 3 to 5%, depending on your market, in home values, which was really kind of unusual. We weren't used to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say normal market. In a
Hmm.
normal market, it's 4%, but we haven't had a normal market since the pandemic.
Yeah.
I don't know what normal is anymore.
Right. Yeah. Either it was double digits up or completely flat or down.
Yeah.
Nothing close to that 4 to 6% uh, rate or appreciation that we might expect.
Yeah. And rates earlier this year were the lowest they had been in 2 years. And so buyers were coming out, but that was, on the other end of that was a lack of inventory. We continue to not have enough homes to sell. And buyers, when they're, having to pay 6.5% interest, they don't want to buy just anything. And I don't blame them. They want to buy the best house out there. And so they're standing back and taking their time, deciding what they want.
Yeah, when they consider what they're paying currently in rent or taking on that mortgage at 6%, they're not seeing a significant upside in their living experience.
Right.
And so the hard sell about, but you're paying your own bank account with the principal portion of your payment, and it just isn't going as well as it used to. I think
One of the,
go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things, there used to be a stat, which I'm not sure it's still valid, that the average home sells every 5 years. I think that's a
Yes.
little short. I don't think that that's true in our area. There's much more buying and holding. But one of the things,
It used to be true about every 4 or 5 years, people were moving up or moving down,
yeah,
but it's slowed down because our prices have gotten so high and interest rates have been fluctuating so much. So is it now
it,
7 to 10 years? Or I
I,
can't remember the statistics. I should know that since this is the purpose of this podcast.
well, what I was going to point out was one of the dynamics that's affecting that time frame in a house is if somebody bought in 2021 or 22 with a 3% mortgage, they are stuck in that house in some ways because their house is not appreciated in value. So they haven't necessarily been gaining an equity at any particularly great rate. And if they want to sell and buy, there's a 5 to 10% cost of moving between the expenses of selling and moving and realtor fees and all of the things you do when you first move into a new house and all the things you do to prep your house for sale. So it can cost 5 to 10% of your home value to sell. And that's completely coming out of your equity, not out of the loan portion of it.
Right.
And then you add onto that the low interest rate, they cannot buy the same house today for the payment that they have. So even if they were just going to do a lateral move and just move across the street, they would lose 10% and they would pay a higher monthly fee. So we're seeing people not be in any hurry whatsoever to sell, even in situations where they might have outgrown their house or have some other need. So it's really more rather than it being a move of preference. I'm not sure anyone ever moves just because they like the house across the street better. But rather than just, oh, it would be nice to have XYZ, we're only seeing people that have to sell really sell. So those are job change, downsizing because they can't do stairs, perhaps divorce. Um, those are kind of the main reasons. And then they become a little bit more, there's other factors involved with that.
Yeah, we're seeing not necessarily short sales, but people who are losing money because they're selling too soon after they bought. Um, Not to, pat ourselves on the back too much, but a couple of years ago, we were having conversations with clients that said this is a very active market. These are multiple offers, and you're riding way over the list price. And you need to know that if you're going to sell in the next 2 to 5 years, you could actually lose money when you sell. Are you sure you're, committed to this house? And we're now experiencing people who are having to sell
Yep.
after they've been in the house for 2 years or less.
Yeah. I usually like to say, it's 3 years you might break even. It'll be about 5 years before you see any actual
Yeah.
capital gains that you'll get to keep. Um,
Well, do you think that's still the case with the prices being so high?
I think that, yeah, I mean, I think that 3 to 5 years is still kind of a good wisdom. I'll stick with it.
Okay.
Um, I mean, there's no guarantees, right? I mean, you just got to time it. If there's something that happens to make the prices go down for a particular reason, you might need to wait 6 months or a year to see how that fleshes itself out.
Yeah. Yep.
Uh, Real estate is highly influenced by just the basic economic truths of supply and demand. And when they're like during COVID, the demand goes up, prices go up really high, and then more inventory comes into a play because people are saying, "Wow, I didn't know I could get that price for my house. I'm going to list it." And then if we get too many houses on the market, then it goes down. But we've had a couple interesting things happen simultaneously in that kind of teeter-totter of supply and demand. So we were just talking about the fact that supply is weak for some of the factors we were talking about as far as people who have bought at a low interest rate, um, and only moving for reasons that they really feel compelled to. So you would think that with the supply going down, that there would be a upward pressure on prices, with a steady demand. But what we've seen is that the demand actually has gone down kind of on par with the supply, and that's why prices have stayed stagnant and not gone up. So what are some of the factors that have kept demand down? So we talked
Um,
about interest rates currently being higher. So what are some other factors?
I I think interest rates are the primary factor. I don't know that I can't think of anything else. Really, it seems to dictate every decision,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
But
when you're in a house and you're sitting on a 3% interest rate, you're not going to sell
yeah, but so you're saying that people aren't
unless
interested in moving. The demand has gone down because they nobody wants to give up where they are. Nobody's out shopping for that reason,
yeah, I
or
think
fewer people.
yes, unless there's some compelling reason for them to sell, they're just sitting there.
Yeah. Do you think that the tariffs or the political environment or the war has affected buyers very much?
I think it's a temporary effect because it stops people, for a very small amount of time. Tariffs don't directly affect house prices. There are no tariffs on a home, right? But there are tariffs on tariff expenses on everything, other things that might cut into a buyer's budget. But ultimately, if people need a place to live, they get past that, right?
Yeah.
And they may have put the search on hold for a little while or slowed down to wait and see what was going to happen. But I don't think either one tariffs or this war situation in Iran is having a direct effect.
Interesting.
What do you think? I mean, do you have a different opinion about that?
Um, no, I want to have a different opinion about it.
Mhm.
I want people to be, you know, upset that war is evil, even if we're fighting the evil empire. It's bad, and I don't want to see it, and so I want people to be upset by it and not go home shopping. But the reality is, the that the buyers that we have looking, I don't think care. Not they don't care about the war, but in the context of needing to find a place to live, they get everybody needs a place to live. So I don't think it's slowing it down as much as interest rates.
I've
Uh,
been saying that for the last few years, and I'm almost tired of hearing myself say it, but it is the truth. People always need a place to live. And whatever is happening, unless we're in the middle of a recession like we were from 2008 to about 2012, 13, people are out there looking for houses.
So I think that there's a couple different markets within our greater market, which might be interesting to think about for a moment. So I like to refer to it as the $2 million tech buyer. So there's a certain population that's looking for homes in La Morinda and Danville, parts of Walnut Creek, Alamo, who make their income from the tech industry in some way,
Mhm.
and they have a very generous salary, and they maybe have stock options of which they can avail themselves for a down payment. And so it's not uncommon to see a buyer, and some of you are going to like totally balk at this depending on where you live, that to have $1 million down. And have the income to have $1 million loan for their first home purchase, or maybe their second coming out of a condo or a townhouse.
Yeah.
And in our market, it's been disrupted by AI, and maybe not the way that you think, in the sense of these people they might be losing their jobs due to AI, but they're not losing their job. So if for those people who don't know, on a tech resume, if you haven't been at 5 companies in 6 years, you're not trying. Like there's a lot of movement in the tech industry,
Yeah.
very project driven, and a few other things like that. There's some people who are with the same company for a long time, but it's not uncommon to see that kind of movement. So there's a reshuffling happening with the AI industry where one company is refocusing something and a work group will get laid off, but then they'll get hired at another company who's picking up something new. And we're seeing a lot of shifting. And so I think that it's not so much that the buyers are losing their jobs. They might be going to a different company, but they're also just hesitant to see what's going to happen. Like, I don't know if I'm going to lose my job. Maybe this is the time to relocate to one of the other tech centers like Austin or, Chicago or Portland or Seattle or something like that.
Yep.
And so that they're putting their home buying on hold. So I was talking with another agent in our company who they're working with a number of buyers, but nobody's writing offers. And I think that that's at this price point. And I think that's part of it, that there's a kind of a lull in motivation on the buyer side,
Mhm.
suppressing that demand.
So I heard something on the news a couple of weeks ago, and I'm hope that I'm going to get this. I hope I'm going to relay it accurately. But San Francisco, the city of San Francisco, is having a major real estate busy market at the moment, different from us. What are we, 20 miles away, 15
Yeah,
miles away?
yeah,
And they are going gangbusters over their houses are selling, and they're selling for a lot of money. And this news or cast said that there were tech companies who had reached the time period after their IPO where employees could finally sell their stock options
yeah,
because they got to sit on them for a certain amount of time. And that triggered this San Francisco real estate market
yeah,
that they're going through over there. And so, I mean, you've got these stock options, it's worth a ton of money, and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. And that day comes, and all of a sudden, everybody's out spending it.
yeah. Absolutely. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that about San Francisco. I mean, I know that there had been a resurgence, but I hadn't heard that connection to the
Yeah.
IPOs.
Yeah. And largely related to AI, these AI companies. So they didn't mention anything specifically, but I thought it was just fascinating that something as much as IPO wait period could trigger a real estate market. So we are a microcosm out here. I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything about Austin or Seattle and other tech markets, but it is fascinating um, how it works here. I mean, anyway, so.
So, so that's kind of the some of those things that have suppressed the demand has balanced out with the supply, and so that's why we have not seen the increase in home values like we would have hoped, and really it's been flat, a little bit softer this first quarter. So for first quarter in our 10 cities, I think I can rattle them off: Alamo, Clayton, Concord, Danville, Lafayette, Martinez, Moraga,
Pleasant Hill.
Pleasant Hill, Martinez, Walnut Creek, Orinda. I don't know. Did I get that?
Yes. Yes, I think that's all 10 of them.
All right. Um,
Almost alphabetically.
yeah, almost alphabet. That's why I had to think about it alphabetically. I missed Orinda. So like I said, the first quarter this year, 2026, we had just over 700 single family homes go into contract. Um, the um, the average price, do you have that chart in front of you? Is like a 1.5, no, 1.65 was the average sales price.
Which is
No, not
crazy.
average, median sales price.
Median sales price.
Yeah. So throwing out like the $12 million homes and the fixers that don't really count. Um, and that represents a pretty flat market from a year ago. Slightly more units sold, about the same, slightly up in the average median sales price. And I think that we're going to see that continue for a little while until we see something change about interest rates. And that is what I want to focus on here in our last little bit. So
Okay.
we were doing all these charts following the increase and the big spike in 2020 at 21. Um, we had two graphs that were an absolute mirror image of it. And if you're interested, I think we could put it in the show notes or we'll put a link to it. Or if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, it was like a Rorschach test. You know how like those ink blots where they fold the paper in half and they open it up and you're supposed to say what it looks like.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And there was a absolutely direct inverse relationship to number of homes sold and the interest rate. So that meant as the interest rate went up, transactions went down, and almost the exact same proportions when the interest rates went down, the number of transactions went up. So we
Went up.
saw a big spike of homes being sold when the interest rate was really low, and then it spiked, and then it moved down pretty rapidly in the year that had seven increases.
Yep.
And then it's gradually been coming down as much as the president wants Jerome Powell to lower those interest rates. They've just been slowly lowering for the last couple years, and the number of transactions has slowly increased at almost the same rate. It's really fascinating.
It is very fascinating. It was a really interesting chart when you generated that.
Well, it was one of those ones like, hey, this looks like something else, and did I have it upside down? And then I went and I pulled them both together. I'm like, no, those are different graphs, even though they look almost identical.
It's interesting that we're talking about sales being down, but you said that the median sales price for first quarter was 16
I thought it was 165.
165. Median sales price for first quarter 2019 was 1195.
Yeah,
Crazy.
very, yeah, off. Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. So what's your prediction moving forward for the rest of the year? Not to
Oh,
put you on the spot or anything.
yeah. So let me pull my magic eight ball out, and certainly not. No, what does it say? I don't think until we see any fundamental changes, anything really changing. I don't know. It's the people's livelihoods here in the Bay Area seem to be relatively safe.
Yeah.
I think if we can keep the cost of other goods down so that people aren't using as much of their paychecks just to survive, then that will help the rest of our economy function better. And when the rest of our economy is functioning better, then I think there's people have hope and they're thinking about possibilities. And I'm going to have a kid, so let's buy our first place to bring our kid home to, or whatever it is. But I think that when there's the kind of anxiety created by national news and international politics, it puts a pause on how people choose to spend their money, which is related to the interest rates that being going up and down. And I should say, actually, the interest rate that we used for that chart were mortgage rates, not the prime interest rate
Not the overnight Fed rate.
yeah, not the one that the Fed controls. They're related to each other, but it's not a hard relationship.
That is a very optimistic outlook for somebody who paid $7 for a gallon of gas last week.
I did not say that that's what I thought was going to happen. I said if things settle down and people can become hopeful.
Yeah.
Um, it's very typical for real estate agents to say there's no bad time to buy. And we believe that with an asterisk that if you have to have some place to live, and if you think you're going to be someplace for 5 years, mentioned that kind of time frame earlier, then we think that it almost always makes sense for you to buy a home that you can call your own, that you can paint the walls whatever color you want.
Yeah.
There's a plus and downside that if you want to make a change, you don't have to ask somebody. Of course, if there's a repair, you don't get to ask anyone.
Right.
You got to do it yourself. So it's not without its risk, but I believe that over time, there's no more land being invented. Even if Dubai is creating sandbars for hotels, we're not doing that here in California. There's only so many homes that exist. And while there's effort to get more homes building, there's only so much that can be built. So it's always going to be a cap on supply. And so your value will always be there if you're owning it for the long run.
Yeah. There's no bad time to buy and hold.
Yeah. Yeah. The stock market people will tell you it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. I don't really like some of those stuff, but basically the idea is that if you live in a home for 20 years, it will pay you.
You're going to make money. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All
And
right. Well, good. I'm looking
yeah,
forward to the rest of the year. I'm, putting on my seatbelt, of course, because, we never know when we're going to have a roller coaster. And that's the fun part of this business, I guess. It's never boring.
one last question for you. If your hairdresser asked you while you're in the chair, how's the real estate market? What do you tell her or him?
It's great. It's really great. Yeah,
Uh,
it's interesting.
uh,
What do you
like
say?
um, currently, I'd say it's been a hard couple years. I think we've had a number of transactions that have had unique challenges to them, but I'm not afraid of working hard. And sometimes it's the hard ones that bring the most satisfaction because you
Yeah.
recognize your value that you did something for a client that absolutely justifies our commission. There's nothing like helping first-time home buyers buy a house. There's nothing like helping somebody start a new chapter of their life if it's downsizing or some other
Mhm.
events. And um, so, yeah, I feel like I'm working harder than I ever have. But who's afraid of hard work?
That is the perfect answer.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
You sound like the medical technician when I was at the doctor's office yesterday getting an annual checkup, and they had this verbal tick. We're like, all right, when's your birthday? Yada yada. Perfect. Are you still at this address? Yes, perfect. And then went and got to the scale, and he looks at and he says perfect, and I go, not so much. I won't say what my number was, but it was not a perfect number.
Well, on that note,
All right. Well, if you like this edition of our podcast, be sure to like and subscribe. Refer us to your friends. If you're an agent, check out our other offering, the Real Story with Adam and Sherry Coaching Edition.
yeah,
If you're interested in mentoring as an agent or just want to talk about what it's like to be in the business, be sure to reach out to us.
yeah.
On the final note, Dorothy was right. There's no place like home. See you next time.
Bye-bye.